Hey y'all, and good now. Whenever and wherever this finds you. Well, the parties are raging at my next door neighbor again tonight. But I'm going to go ahead and make this video because this was a conversation I had with Christopher Hatton today. Oh, it explores the possibility of a total electrification of America with run by solar, wind, and batteries. It's very interesting. I hope you enjoy it in this watch.
So you want to lead this one?
Oh, okay. Well, what the video I'm working on is really about, at the end, he talks about how he wants to join with the people on the ground who are getting it done and work together. And they've got groups that are working with different city councils and mayors and stuff. They're working on getting the restrictions changed. What, like it's easier. What I'm having trouble with, they're going to fix that.
Right. So let's talk about that for a minute. There's been some global goals set by people who are in our space, the renewable energy space, over a decade ago to electrify anything that requires energy, including manufacturing, including heating and cooling, including transportation, including furnaces. What they were saying was even after converting all the energy to renewables, there will still be fossil fuel use. And that's for the creation of materials. So until we replace the material creation with like hemp or something, we're still going to be using fossil fuel. So there has to be something happening simultaneously to eliminate fossil fuel use in the creation of materials, if we even want that. Because technically you're burning some, but you're sequestering the rest. So will humanity say that's okay? That I don't know yet. Second is having an organization like the climate lobby at the ground level is important because we set up a platform, but there's still laws within the physical jurisdictions. The platform has to know what those laws are and know how they're changing. So all of this already exists. All the data for this exists. It's the spot tracker. So state policy opportunity tracker for renewable energy. And I think it's spot.org or something like that. But they go into detail about all the different, and then they rank the laws as they exist now, rank the laws that have been introduced and how they've been amended, kind of give a curriculum of how to get it to the point where it falls into the next paradigm where all of these policies are paving the way for it to be 100% solar, wind, and batteries. That's a really good thing. That's a really good thing. So in combination with organizations like Climate Lobby, technological advancement, zero marginal cost economics, and the convergence of renewable energy and energy storage is going to create this mechanism to where more and more over time, natural gas plants are going to be completely replaced by batteries, because we know that there's build out of solar and wind, and a lot of that energy gets wasted because utilities choose to utilize the fossil fuel plants because that's where most of their capital investment is. In an effort to meet the required revenue requirements that are placed on publicly traded utilities and munis and co-ops within a state, all of this whole business model, government co-op thing needs to innovate to the point where we need to open up for competition, eliminate any franchising laws, and eliminate any capital expenditure recoupments. So those are the three things that solidify the utility model as it exists now. But if we open it up to competition, then it's like anyone can choose to buy their own and or sign up with anybody from anywhere. So that's one thing. So we're thinking of the whole thing as a holistic thing, which doesn't exist right now because they're not connected to each other. They're all in these jurisdictions. So if one goes out, the whole planet won't go out. But these can be built in even smarter, as in microgrids that do connect to each other, but then it's called islanding. So if one goes out, the rest of them, prevent a short from reaching their piece. So being able to expand legislative strategy through groups like the Climate Lobby is essential, but it's not an end game if it doesn't work out, because the learning curve, cost reduction, zero marginal cost economics will get people to that point where they're saying yes without government involvement. Then the government's going to be forced to react based on what we're doing. Because I guarantee as soon as someone's able to figure out that they're able to install solar on their home or business and pay less than they're paying now to the utility, by far, that exists now with subsidies. So we're actually just 30% price decline away from getting there without subsidies. That we have to keep in mind, even though that subsidy will still exist, for another 10 years, possibly longer. That is, and it's so somewhere within that 30% price difference is the threshold to where an unsubsidized solar price is going to hit that level of increasing utility cost on average. And once that happens, states and the feds are going to be forced to say it's time to switch, and then they'll remove subsidies from fossil fuels a little bit at a time, making sure that there's no disruption in the flow, in the load.
Maine has decided that they're going to put heat pumps in every house that has oil heat.
Heat pumps have been built into the Inflation Reduction Act. Heat pumps are going to be the future of temperature regulation with water and air in homes. I know that Tesla, the company, is developing a heat pump for homes that's going to be complementary with an HVAC, and possibly they might even build homes later on. But
they have window units.
Who has window units?
On this video, they were showing window unit heat pumps.
So yeah, and if they're self-installing window unit heat pumps, it's all over. Because if you don't need any expertise to set it up, then it's just like boom, boom, like possibly hire a LEED certification organization and get your house energy efficient, and then it'll pay for itself. Yeah. A state like Maine, which is very cold in the winter, nice in the summer, it makes a lot of sense for them to step into this arena. And I know that in Vermont, so it's like Green Mountain Power is their utility, and they partnered with Tesla a while back, offering solar and battery leases for their customers at a very cheap price. So there's a lot of batteries in Vermont right now because of that. My point is New England stepped into this a while back, and they're doing a great job. What does all this mean? Let's talk about the battery picture first, because solar and wind have started to hit scale, and they're just going to get cheaper, and we've seen evidence of that. And then solar is better than wind in a couple of ways, because you have to give the turbines oil changes for wind. So there's a lot of maintenance that's required during the life, and then it's harder to recycle wind propellers right now. But they're getting creative and not filling up lakes or landfills anymore. So that was I think in Lake Erie, they just sent them right to the bottom of the lake.
He was saying that the solar and wind is mostly in the interior of the country, and where most of the people live is on the coast. So he was talking about transmission, and I'm thinking microgrids.
So I would argue that there would need to be an intercontinental grid, which could enable the day side of the planet to be powering the night side. It should all be underground and accessible in a conduit. So like the boring company could bore across the world and place long distance transmission line inside of it, and then hook it to different places in the world and have one big energy grid. But then each place will have their own each neighborhood will have their own microgrid. And then just like how solar road panels work, if one of them goes out, it'll island itself off so it doesn't mess with any of the neighboring microgrids. And then this major intercontinental piece will just be charging the batteries as these electrons go by the microgrids. There will be some arterial legs off of this main branch of transmission that can hook to the batteries that are way up here away from that main transmission line. So it'll work exactly the same way like a Hyperloop would work, with like a main one and then, ribs and then right into these local loops. Our future grid can follow the same, and then have solar roadways above it that charges it on a regular across the globe. Transmission is a very important argument now because we know that there's no connection from west to east. There's no connection from the Rocky Mountains to the plains. There's a sharp cut. So it's like, and they're separated by ISOs. Those are the wholesale purchasers, grid overseers, and they're kind of the market maker for load on the lines, transmission line. The ISO has to innovate also. The ISOs have to merge together, and the software has to get better because the software is going to be monitoring the microgrids and these main transition lines, and then all of that can be done by AI. So it's like there's really no purpose for these organizations anymore after the build out is done, including utilities, which sucks for them, but this can all be automated to the point where each individual is getting their profit margin, but is it worth the same amount as today's wealth on that industry is worth? And I would say it's probably worth a lot more, because you're switching the revenue model and you're able to differentiate between electron produced by renewable energy, electron used that was produced by renewable energy, and an electron stored that was produced by renewable energy. And you can put a different value on each one of them. Do we need to do that? No, definitely not. So the things that we do need to do is, at a certain point, when the threshold reaches, an unsubsidized solar and battery cost reaches the threshold of the increasing utility costs right now.
So one of the things that you're going to want to take into consideration and teach your team is that you want to make sure people are aware that they were going to want to change their gas units into electric units, and they may want to plan a bigger system for that in the future, even though they're not going to change it right now. But if they're going to change it in 5 or 10 years, they would want a bigger system now.
That's exactly right. So that's something that I talk with most of my clients about, is planning for the future. Are you planning to increase your usage in the future? And what does that mean? You're going to get a pool, a hot tub. Do you have a air conditioner? That if you're going to add one, it's going to use a lot more. Do you have an electric car? Exactly. Electric heating and cooling, all of it. Yes, that'll definitely become more and more of an argument as the price per kilowatt hour for solar, wind, and batteries approaches the price per kilowatt hour of the inputs for natural gas. So that's a while yet.
So my question is, how could Rewire America or Electrify America, or whatever it's called, building electrification, how could they support you and you support them? Now, they're also into efficiency. Their efficiency teams could team up with your solar teams and work on take a holistic view of the house.
The transition will require renewable generation, storage of that generation, and energy efficiency. So most of the goals are going to be met with energy efficiency. And so it's like, if we're using less, then we don't need to build out as much. But that's current paradigm thinking, where we're thinking we need to build 400 to 500%. So there's overcapacity and free and abundant energy. Yeah. And that's the thoughts that are going to come in once that threshold is reached. It's like, whoa, now the business model opens up where we can buy a utility, close it down, build out these solar, wind, and batteries, and then retrofit the grid to a microgrid. And it's like, wow, this is happening. And this is going to happen soon, because in other areas of the world, we're already well below that threshold. So it's like, now you have a measurement of where's it the cheapest in the world? Where's it the most expensive in the world? And both of those are coming down. So people have to realize that they're both coming down. And so it'll just take a little bit longer for this more expensive area of the world to reach that threshold, but it's still going to happen. And the quicker energy efficiency is taken into account, the steeper that price decline gets.
Well, now the reason I'm bringing that up is because people can get money for getting their house fixed. You sell them a whole package, you see. You get the solar, you get the electric units, and you get your house upgraded, and the government's going to pay for $14,000 of it.
Right. And there's other incentives that exist too.
Yes.
Like if you get a gold or platinum certification from LEED, you get $6.50 per square foot in your house. There's all kinds of things that can be built into products like that. Yes. Packages. I believe we're going to start to see a lot of different types of products in the solar arena coming out here in the next year or two, including building materials that face the sun, solar roadways, so sidewalks, patios, driveways, parking lots, roads, awnings, siding, windows, shingles, all of it. The part is people are going to be saying, oh, I'll get a battery too. Then they defect from the grid more, meaning use utility less. So right now, solar and battery can defect 85% of grid use right now. So just imagine a little bit better battery efficiency. So you're able to store a little more for that same cost or lower cost. And then you can defect from the grid 100%. And the more people that reach that level, which is going to be more and more people as the price continues to decline, the more pressure that's going to be put on government to handle the utility model. Saying, oh, so now you have 1/3 of your customers that aren't using the grid. Maybe we should pass laws that will start to enforce price declines. So you set ceilings and then you lower that ceiling over time, saying utilities cannot charge more than this per kilowatt hour. That's going to be the result of that. So then everybody will see forced declines by what you and me are choosing to do right now.
I like the idea of a holistic job. I know that's too much to put on you just building your solar business, but who knows? Maybe these people are hungry and they'll put up that part and just collaborate with you where you're at.
I mean, that's fine. But there's a lot of people out there thinking like us. So let's bring them all in. And that's where the innovation starts to explode, because these ideas converge with other ideas, and then it's like, wow, that's a good idea, and then that idea converges with something else, and then it starts to create this pathway that's building its own paradigm. And that was kind of a gift to the current energy ecosystem, saying, how long would it take for you to recoup all the costs that you've already spent? And so that's not taking into account the business models that are about to exist. So in the United States, we have different times of the day where more energy is used, and we call that peak load, and that's usually when people get back from work. So between 4 and 7 is when people come home, cook, watch TV, use energy and stuff. We responded to this decades ago by starting to build what's known as a peaker plant to accommodate for this peak, which reduced blackouts and brownouts, which was good. But these peaker plants are very, very expensive because the utilization is so low. They charge a very high price for that electricity during that time. So they spin up, create extra load, and then they cut them off. So it's like, for that very little bit of time to meet that load, you're getting charged double or triple for that energy. So this just happens to be the injection point of these large grid scale batteries. So what the battery companies are saying is, at the prices that exist now, you can shut down the peaker plant, even if it's brand new, build out these batteries, and have a more resilient, reactive and calculated smart grid because of the batteries. And you don't need to build solar or wind. You just charge the batteries when the price is low at night, because you're going to hook your arbitrage software to these. You discharge the energy during that peak time. And then, so that business model exists now. Replace peaker plants with batteries without having to build any more generation. And that there's about, 250 gigawatt hours in America of peak load. So that would be around it would be like 150,000 or 250,000 of these megapacks. Right now, Tesla's producing about 10,000 a year. They're going to scale that up, because this is just a pilot line and they've just started their energy business, but there's dozens of companies across the world doing this. So when I say Tesla, I think about all of the battery manufacturing companies that are producing grid scale. The beauty of this is the sale of electricity during peak can pay for the batteries and pay for the brand new peaker plant that you just shut down within the battery's life. When you get to because there'll probably still be a premium on that time of use, that's going to pay off all of this a lot quicker. So then there's no stranded asset there. So it's like you guys, utilities, can use these batteries to eliminate your stranded asset portfolio, because they now know that any expenditures that they're making right now is a bet that the old paradigm is going to live. And that's a pretty risky bet, especially with what's going on across the globe right now. But if you think about it that way, what would be the next target for batteries? If you're just doing it based on filling up load, then it would be the large produced, so nuclear plants, any gas plant that's in between peaker plant and this level. So you want to encapsulate everything. And then you start to, and since the build out is reducing the price of batteries, that it's more affordable for these people and it fits into their business model. So then they're replacing large gas plants and nuclear with batteries. And then it's about, once you get to the ma and pop producers, which are, co-ops, municipals, smaller non-publicly traded utilities, they're going to get involved when the size of the battery fits their needs and the price. So right now it's just bulk and expensive, and then it's going to be bulk and less expensive, and then it'll be customized and cheap. That's when we're going to start to see, okay, now we can replace all of our generation with this because there's enough solar and wind in the area already. So you start to see this complete transition from the current model to, we're going to replace all of this with batteries and then build over capacity of solar and wind that can connect to it. And then the microgrid piece is another argument, but that can be built into this strategy, which I'm sure it already is by the people that have been doing it for a while. And then this opens up the opportunity. Yeah. And then when the microgrids come along, it should be neighborhood, like we talked about before. So every home in the neighborhood gets power wall, and then every neighborhood gets enough battery to store overcapacity, and then free and abundant energy for that neighborhood. Right. So that's going to be the longest piece, because even with the superpower argument, we know that initial build out and then incremental 20% expenditure can get you most of the way, but there's still this much needed for industry. So that will just happen with more build out. Think about it like this. Every time the batteries fill up, you're taking down another coal, gas, or nuclear plant. Every single. So you want the batteries to be as full as often as possible. When the recycling piece kicks in, you're going to be able to reuse 95%. So then the next round becomes a 5% expenditure. So it's like we're headed towards a completely renewable, reusable future. Just imagine, and then like this nuclear diamond battery, you just shove one of those in there, and that's going to add, that might be thousands of miles of range just from one of those things in there. And then you have sodium, lithium, and then like a supercapacitor for acceleration. There's all kinds of things that can happen that can reduce the energy that's used right now in Teslas and other EVs and stuff. In general, the tech that exists now can completely encapsulate all externalities that exist in the manufacturing sector, energy production, and distribution sector. And then that would have second, third, fourth ripple effects that would include manufacturing, heating, cooling, all of this. So you solve all of these thousands and thousands and millions of problems with this one strategy. And then this kind of stuff gets me excited because there's all different kinds of storage technology in the pipeline that does not use batteries. So, these build outs can be accelerated to get these hydro batteries working with solar and batteries so that the pumping is renewable and automatic. And then there's like facilities with giant tanks that are seasonal storage. So all of these things are going to start to pop up and reduce the dependency on these batteries to get to the storage level, which is completely beautiful. And yes, they'll cost more, but these people will do it anyway because it's part of their business model and create new synergies and opportunities with the electrification of the world. So we'll see a lot of complementary pieces popping up. And eventually there'll be a piece that'll step change all of this and just have wireless, free and abundant energy for anybody to tap into. So yeah, that's kind of the story right now. And I think we're coming to a point where right now utilities are starting to replace peaker plants with grid scale batteries. And then homes are putting batteries in their home and signing up to what's called a virtual power plant, meaning that you say it's okay to drain your battery during certain peak or emergency times in your jurisdiction. And in California right now, you get over $2 kilowatt hour with their virtual power plant. There's one in Texas that has over 5,000, the one in Vermont, Australia has a shit ton. So they're building these virtual power plants out of multiple homes that have batteries in them. And then the owner of the battery gives you access to drain it so then the owner's contributing to the grid, but then they get to pay their systems off quicker for that. And there's one more thing I want to mention. There's something called V2G, vehicle to grid. So meaning each electric vehicle that's out there that is equipped with this technology, V2G, can plug in at home or anywhere in the grid where there's a plug-in, and then you can donate the energy in the car to the grid and be compensated for it. So that's why I think like electrification of school buses and Greyhound and stuff like this will matter, because you can get these large mobile batteries moving to areas where energy is needed, and then you can be compensated at a higher rate by discharging your battery into that local grid. So, and then if the autonomy is a part of this, then these vehicles will be driving themselves there. So we're going to have this autonomous fleet of vehicles coming to the rescue for energy, as long as the roadway infrastructure is good. So there's all these things that you can think of that'll plug all these holes are thought of in this paradigm.
Well, the future definitely looks bright, and we covered a lot of the information that I released in a video earlier today about the electrification of America. And it was kind of cool that Christopher hadn't even seen the video, and he related so well to most of it. And I just really enjoy the talks that we have, and letting him explore. His mind is very visionary, and he sees deep into the future, and I like it when he reveals it to me, even though I don't understand it all the time. But I do enjoy it, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you down the road.